Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to the next episode of Si Vis Pacem. Today is 9th of May, so the day when Russians celebrate their famous Victory Day. So today we want to discuss how this day is celebrated today, how it is imprinted in history, and how the politics look like in the world after World War II.
So, welcome to the new episode of Si Vis Pacem, and it's a podcast about transatlantic security and international relations, also American foreign policy.
Yes, sir.
And today we discuss a bunch of topics somehow connected to World War II, or Great Patriotic War, as it's called in Russia. So,
9th of May, my friend.
9th of May, and big day for Russians, I guess, just in general, big day for Europe, probably. So how should we think about World War II? Let's start with this simple question.
Well, it's a very broad topic. I'm sure you can write an entire book about this. But on how we should think about World War II as the Europeans, and I think also as humanity, is as a terrible mistake that should never happen again. So just, learn from mistakes of the past and do not repeat your mistakes. But I think the important question is, how should we deal with the controversies surrounding World War II?
Yes.
The differences between nations and perceptions of what happened. So I think 9th of May is a very interesting example of that, where it's basically one of the biggest holidays in Russia and celebrating a great event from their history. While some people in Germany, especially a bit more conservative or people who do not acknowledge that Germany was the sole country that started World War II, might feel, how do you say it, discriminated or humiliated by celebrating. Yeah, exactly. I think humiliation would be the great word here. So, should we celebrate 9th of May?
Being in Europe. I guess in Russia there is no question. It's a very clear answer. Not only Russia, it's post-Soviet space. I mean, there is controversy in Ukraine because this commemoration event becomes politics, unfortunately, and when it becomes politics, it becomes really controversial. I think there is nothing political in this event. Of course, politicians, like Putin, like his regime, they use this event for their own gains, but we still should understand the significance of this day, for people, because so many people just died, sacrificed their lives, and so many people, and so many families would never just understand how many people, died, were slaughtered in this war, and not only Russians,
yes,
Soviet Union and Europeans and allies in general, how there was a big generational gap. In terms of people just couldn't have, just because there were so many men, a lot of women after the war.
Yeah,
I think we should celebrate. We need. It should. I don't really understand. When people have this kind of the day that they celebrate the same way they celebrate New Year. So with a big pompous day like fireworks and something like this. It should be more a day when you kind of go to when you just commemorate people who died in this war. So it should be more like a travel day.
Yeah, I think
and that's
reflect on the past.
Yeah, and that's how it was actually in Soviet Union after the World War II. During even Soviet Stalin times, it was actually just not prohibited to talk about the war, but they didn't really celebrate it. They just mourned in terms of the losses that they suffered as a country together. And I guess that's, there's a lot of time passed, and there's different approaches to it. But I guess in general, we just understand and feel the history embedded in our culture, and just the print that World War II has on us, on our system, on everything is so significant. We shouldn't we couldn't and shouldn't ignore it. I would say like this.
Yes, I agree with you on this point, but I think we should also assume the perspectives of different nations.
Yeah.
As I already said, people in Germany might feel humiliated or offended by the fact that some different country celebrates the anniversary of defeating your own country and fatherland,
especially showing their military
equipment
every year,
stuff every year.
Very belligerent.
But also an interesting controversial topic is that the countries of the former Eastern Bloc that were forced to be part of the Eastern Bloc. So so my homeland of Poland, nobody would ever consider celebrating this day, because nobody would even consider naming it liberation.
Yeah,
many people just say, oh yeah, basically one oppression was substituted with the other. So how would you consider this, considering the numerous crimes also committed by the Soviet Union?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's so many different perspectives on this, and we couldn't have one opinion about the role of World War II in European history, and just because of the controversy, how it started, it's very hard actually to talk about this and just pinpoint even my opinion. For me, it's a hard topic, I guess. I don't have one answer, clear answer. I think, I would say nevertheless, I would commemorate this day, I guess, maybe silently, just having a big celebration, but just because, they still, this thing, Soviet soldiers, and I think about this as like soldiers, not government, not Soviet Union, but people, as some community, they kind of overcame this difficulty. They beat fascism, and it was like purely not initiative, but coming from people, not from the government. I mean, actually, government made so many mistakes. Before the World War II, started in Russia, and I feel Stalin, how I can put it, just was partially probably responsible for the consequences of Great Patriotic War. That they they weren't prepared for this war, even though intelligence basically said that something wrong happening on the border. And there would be invasion because he couldn't hide so many troops, basically, and camouflage and everything. It's not possible. And I mean, Soviet intelligence was always good. So they just said, we should be prepared. And Stalin believed in this friendship with Hitler. And when I think about, for example, how the war erupted, I guess this, it's all real politics, and I blame real politics. And you can say that the Soviet Union suffered the most, from its own geopolitics, just because it trusted in this union with Hitler. That kind of could, they thought it would stop him from invading Soviet Union, but they were wrong, and a lot of people suffered. But just because there's so much controversy and people have this, image of Stalin as liberator, in Russia at least, as like the guy who unified the country, which is completely bullshit, I guess, because, the war unified the country, this is true, but not one person. This is personification of people in Russia, has a long history, and Putin also and different politicians use it in Russia. So just arguing that we need to have one centralized government and one person having total authority over people. But to the point, I guess I went far ahead.
No worries.
I understand people have different opinions, so I understand when people in Poland would say, well, this is tricky for us.
Yes, but I think many countries, it's hard to say that all the countries who are on the Allied side always did good things.
Yeah,
because as we said before, Soviet Union also had a part in starting World War II, and also Poland had a part in cooperating with Hitler before the start of World War II. It's all real politics, as you said. So I think the way that we should commemorate on the 2nd of May is 9th of May. Sorry, is just to remember exactly the people who suffered.
8th of May or 9th of May, it doesn't really matter.
It's just symbolic.
It's really symbolic, and
I think we should just remember the people who suffered, because it doesn't matter which state started the war, which state was the most responsible. People suffered all over the world, and I think we should remember this especially.
Yes. I mean, for this,
Yeah.
like cheers.
Cheers to that, exactly.
Yeah, this is a good toast. Yes, this is true, and also people should not fight over like this history. There is like this big, like not debate, but they issued statements. I mean, American government and Russian government issued statements, and in their statement they both like say something like, well, that's we Americans who liberated Europe, and then Russians say, well, no, that's we Russians who liberated Europe. This is stupid. This is stupid because that should, in our memory, this should unify us as nations, as European nations, as part of something bigger than like our nations, as part of some global community. And the thing is, now it only splits them because of because of many things. But this is, I guess, how do you feel about this? All this. Wars over memory, who liberated who, and all this stuff.
I think it's again just politics.
Yeah.
It's history and politics should not go together in any case, but unfortunately they do, and they will, and it will not change. So every country wants to see themselves as the good guys. And every country wants to know the world that, hey, we are the best. We are the best and good guys. So Russia has their own narrative of being the sole liberators, and don't get me wrong, Russia suffered the most, and Soviet Union suffered the most. And the effort to beat Nazi Germany was absolutely huge on their part. But we also have to remember that possibly they would not have been able to defeat the Nazi Germans without American and British support and materials and supplies, etc. So it's all an overlapping, mechanism. And saying that one of the nations played a bigger part than the other is just stupid. Because first of all, it doesn't serve anything in modern days. It just deepens the divide, and it's just simply not true. It was a group effort.
Yeah, it should unify us. That's how it should be. I guess everyone should have his own personal narrative about this. I mean, it's also hard to think about, for example, Polish families who suffered from Katyn.
Yeah.
And you discuss with them World War II, and they have very different opinion. You get a little bit mad at them, but I mean, you should understand that they have different perspective just because history was very different for them.
Exactly. But I think also it's about the acceptance and denial. Because, for example, look at Polish and German cooperation nowadays. That the two countries are huge business partners and collaborating in the European Union, etc. And at the same time, Russia and Poland are the biggest enemies right now. Poland considers Russia the biggest threat to its sovereignty. And that's the biggest opponent in the region. And I think it still has a lot to do with history, because Germany took the blame and accepted that they started World War II and issued formal apologies for everything. And the Soviet Union also did that after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. But there's this sort of a return to this denial politics in Russia. Saying, oh no, we did not start World War II.
True.
And don't get me wrong, Polish government does this as well. And they do not agree that
both very biased.
Yeah, it's all pretty biased. And I think if all countries just accepted that, we all did bad things and we apologized and we promised not to ever do it again, I'm sure cooperation should would prevail. Exactly.
Yeah, true. So let's just. And I mean, I feel really worried about Germany because of AfD. It's still gaining power. It's the biggest, opposition party right now in parliament. And I mean, position of AfD is just we shouldn't commemorate. And it's a shame, to be kind of to bear these consequences of war still, mentally as well as just all this historically. And this narrative is a shame for us. I feel really bad about this just because, I mean, I'm also biased in this. I mean, we are all biased, of course, and I'm as a Russian, I feel this is just simply wrong in a way that you should, preserve this memory over what you did, just because it was, it's so many atrocities involved and just calamities that, were caused by Nazism and just that Reich. It was you couldn't just see how you can overcome this and say, well, let's just drop it and let's go forward. I feel it should be the narrative of German government, and I feel living in Germany, I feel really safe that they have this narrative. Otherwise, I don't know. I would probably face some Nazis on the street.
Well, if you go to certain districts of
Yeah,
Berlin, you will still face them, but they're a minority for sure.
and they're not supported by government,
Yeah,
which is like
they're
AfD.
basically illegal. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I totally get what you mean, and I think they're what Germany is doing is just perfect because they are maybe not perfect in every way, but they agree that their history had dark moments.
Mhm.
I still think that sometimes they prefer too much to forget about it than to speak about it,
Mhm.
and maybe this should change. But I think it's way better than as
Yeah.
if Germany was revisionist about their
And
stance and history.
And I mean, they pretty much overcame this and they move forward. They don't really concentrate on the past
Yes,
so much.
that's actually
But
pretty
maybe
beneficial.
what makes them unique right now in Europe, they don't really concentrate on their past because it was so bad,
Yeah,
so to speak. And, they just move forward.
and I also think a personal note for myself when I came here to Germany, I realized that people know nothing about maybe not nothing, but very little about their history families. Like they would know, okay, yeah, my grandparents were born this year and they
Mhm.
did this and that, but they know no details. I mean, this was a cultural shock for me because in Poland, you ask basically anybody, and they would have some information. Oh yeah, my great grandmother did this and fought in this war, and I'm so proud of them. Blah blah blah. And this gave me a reflection. Wow, maybe Germany is so successful because they do not dwell on the past at all. They just
Yeah.
look forward, not backwards.
They don't talk about the past. This is true because it's a little bit. There is a shame involved in all these past discussions, I guess. And I mean, just I guess young people, but there is a trend. Young people start forgetting about stuff that happened in the past, and because you don't discuss things properly, probably even if it's painful, you still maybe need to discuss it. Need to somehow just consider what happened with Germany.
Yeah, I think that the German narrative sometimes is too, how to say, general. It's like saying, yeah, Germany was bad in World War II, they were evil. Okay, let's move along to the next topic. And there are no
Yeah.
details, which sort of makes this some Germans not
I mean-
understand the suffering of different nations.
They're a little bit more concrete with the Jews narrative, I would
Yes,
say.
that's true, that's true.
Building memorials, and we know this famous memorial in Berlin, which is like a big, like massive land in the center, just were given to German authorities, just like to have like this Jewish memorial. And something is like, yeah, it's a different policy in terms of probably commemoration of World War II, but. Yeah, I guess let's move to some other topic.
Sure.
We pretty much covered this one,
I guess we did.
and I guess this is very connected, I guess, topic. So we still live in the post World War II world, or post World War II system, because there were no big shocks in the system that occurred after that. Maybe the one shock that happened was like the demise of Soviet Union, but this still didn't really change the system fundamentally. It changed maybe distribution of power, but it didn't change the system itself. We still live in this world, and I guess that's why it is probably important to remember this day, just because to understand that peace is not perpetual, and we should all face new wars in the future, or all other bad things that we like never think about it, as pandemic, for example.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like in conjunction with world system and world politics about World War II?
Well, I think it's relates somehow to the notion of the end of history that
Yes.
appeared by Fukuyama, excuse me.
No problem. All this.
Yeah, and he basically said that it will be the end of history after the dissolution of the Soviet
Yes.
Union because there was no forces of evil or different things to overcome, and we still live in this world because he might have been partially right, but he basically thought about some great changes that will happen just from one day to the other, like a great war or something like this.
Yeah.
But now we see changes that take place gradually. So let's look at the rise of China. It did not happen overnight. It was happening for over like last 20 years. And the crisis with the virus that we have now might be an amplifier but
Yes.
it did not start the process. It just, it was a
No,
catalyst for the entire process.
that's true. But also, I guess, I think this is the good example. Fukuyama is a good example how they promote certain ideas, even in terms of academia. So, when you talk about social sciences, you should understand there is no truth. It's not like natural sciences. There is like just
Yeah.
simply no truth. There is like different opinions. You back up your opinions with different arguments. But in the time of Fukuyama, this was Mearsheimer writing the same stuff as he writes now. No, not very differently, and he kind of predicted everything. In terms of this is just wrong narrative. That's the end of history, just because the world is more complex, and there's like great power competition, the tragedy of great power competition that never ends. It's gonna reveal itself somehow, and now we see, yeah, I mean, it actually revealed, with Russia and China. It's becoming way more dangerous to live in this world in terms of because they just have this competition over everything right now. It feels like there's so few points where they cooperate, like almost none, almost none. We still have nuclear cooperation between like Russia and the US is the only thing that we still have, and we have we have economic kind of cooperation between China and the US, but after pandemic it's really uncertain, really uncertain.
Yes, it is, and we still live in this post-World War II world because we still have the international organizations in place that were instituted after World War II. But I feel this might change, not overnight, but gradually.
Yeah.
As I said, with the rise of China and how the US is withdrawing from many of those international organizations set up after World War II. The I think the international regime might change in the next 20, 30, 50 years
Yeah.
very, very starkly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's already changing. There's like a process involved, and I guess the problem of international organizations, in particular the UN, is just it doesn't work. It's not functional. People go there, argue, and just because they have like these five powers, which like four of them both like are European, and it doesn't really reflect like redistribution of power because India has a bigger economy than Great Britain, so it doesn't really work so well because no one wants to change it, and it's just like they all have veto powers and they just all argue about stuff and they just veto each other. And sometimes, I mean, the US when it had power, it didn't really require the UN just because it knew it going to face some challenges there. So I guess just the US like acted very unilaterally afterwards, just because it kind of was on this wave of Pax Americana,
Yeah, it was in a position
dominance.
to do so.
Yes, and now it's gradually changing because first of all, like the US kind of like doesn't really want to be involved in the world as much as it used to be. But there is still, big debate about South China Sea because it's like so many actors involved, people kind of trying to pull America in this war. They just like say, well, we should be more present in South China Sea. Same in Europe.
Yeah.
All these troops, all these like big maneuvers, big military exercises. All this, kind of course, puts a situation just at risk. And yeah, we didn't have any kind of ceasefire during this pandemic, and they tried to do it. I guess like the US and Russia blocked it. No surprise, how it happens every time.
Conflict is still going on.
Yeah, and I guess it's important to discuss this proposal. It's in January 2021. We have the last kind of nuclear agreement fading away, so to speak. It's a new start, the biggest arms control agreement, I guess, in terms of nuclear weapons. And it's fading away. The US kind of indicates that it's going to just, defect from the agreement.
So no renewal, right?
Won't renew it because like now they don't require the Senate vote, so we just can renew it on the level of presidents. And they don't want to do it, and they want to involve somehow China in this trilateral, and then they want to create this trilateral arms control agreement. Which is stupid just because you look at numbers, you see, China has 200 something, 70, 90, I don't really remember, but
a lot.
Not a lot. I mean, it's way less than, Russia and the US have, like way less warheads. And somehow they just want to bring China to the agreement. I mean, it's a good idea because the US is really worried about all these new technologies arising, all these asymmetries in power in terms in terms of you don't really need to have, such a big fleet. Right now, it's just enough to have a couple of very advanced missiles to hit them, It's all changing, and they really feel, I guess, feared just because like their American military machine is losing its power, and they want to have an agreement with China, but that's not a good way to do it, just because like the only agreement between Russia and the US is this New START agreement, and after that, I don't know, they're going to be new arms race, and this is unpredictable.
Yeah, it's the part of this gradual change, and I think it's important to remember that all big change in the international regime or system that happened in history, they were all gradual. Let's say the era between the Napoleonic Wars and World War One. People say that World War One was just bomb that exploded and blew up the old system, but it's not really true. You had many events that led to the transformation of the system, and World War One was just the nail in the coffin to burying the old Treaty of Versailles system. And the same thing, our system after World War Two is already 75 years old today. Basically becomes 75 years old. And the previous system, which was between Napoleonic Wars and World War One, lasted 100 years. So who knows? Maybe it's time for an overhaul of the system.
Yeah, and I mean it's inevitable. Sooner or later, it's gonna happen, and we of course kind of can now. We are living in this time, and this is. I mean, on the one hand, it's historical. On the other, it's a little bit frightening, I guess, because you never know.
Uncertainty is frightening.
Yes, you never know what's gonna happen next, and things that happen now between all these great powers are pretty disturbing in terms of they really. I mean, it looks like they're really kind of like they're ready to fight with each other conventionally, not even not without even nukes. Just because they have like big military budgets, they invest a lot of money in military, and they have good military, and they just need to use it just because. When military exists, there should be some function to it. It should fight one day, probably.
Well, hopefully not.
Hopefully not, but the situation. I mean, but then we should have some kind of cooperation that binds them together and doesn't prevents them from escalating situation. Because right now situation is escalating, and there is no end to escalation. I mean, it looks like this. There is no end to escalation, and of course. The only hope can be some new Gorbachev, on the American side, because, American presidents are just hate Russia, just generally.
Yeah.
And they're very biased, and they couldn't, when it comes to China, they think, like real politics, but when it comes to Russia, they think pretty much, we shouldn't recognize Russia as power.
Yeah, it's very ideological.
Yeah, this is probably a big mistake. We'll see, I guess, in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the last topic, I guess let's discuss Germany, and there's big debate right now in Germany. For people who don't follow, I guess the situation is, I guess you can tell us a little bit about technical side. So they want to replace their Tornados.
Yeah.
So and I still couldn't understand how is this technical issue. So they want to replace it with F-18s and Eurofighters, I guess 50%. So I guess the debate is that they won't have a possibility to carry nuclear weapons, or what's the problem with this?
So the problem with the Eurofighters is that those planes are not nuclear certified. Mm-hmm. So they don't have the hardware to have nuclear weapons mounted and to deploy them in combat, which usually are tactical nukes employed on such planes. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that, NATO also relies on their nuclear arsenal. And right now, the planes in the German fleet that are capable of using nuclear weapons are the Tornadoes. But those planes are aging and slowly reaching the end of its service life. So the Germans need to look for a replacement. Mm-hmm. And the two possibilities are either to buy a plane from a different country, which has the capability to use nukes, or develop a new version of the Eurofighter, which is a cooperation project between many European countries, and adds the possibility to use nukes.
Yeah.
But this would require, redesigning of the plane and, striking deals with different partners.
Yes.
So the easier way would be just to buy new planes from the US. Mm-hmm. So the idea here is to buy the Hornets, which are nice successors to the Tornadoes because they're multi-role fighters capable of ground strikes and air missions. And the Eurofighter is more of a interceptor fighter, more for keeping control of your own skies, and the missions that it does to support troops on the ground are just supplementary. So basing the entire fleet on the Eurofighters would be just a bad idea.
Okay.
And this is where politics come in. Germany decided to buy some Eurofighters and some Hornets. And the problem is that it seems that the Ministry of Defense made this decision without consulting the coalition members in the government, which pissed off some of the coalition members of the government in Germany. And the coalition is quite shaky right now, right?
Yes, I guess the politics in Germany is... the whole coalition is falling apart. CDU and SPD coalition is falling apart, socialists with conservatives. I guess because socialists just are losing popularity in Germany because they just, follow this CDU politics. So they follow conservative politics and they kind of losing their, so to speak, agenda, socialist agenda. And now, because we have Anna Kramp-Karrenbauer, she's from SPD, and Heiko Maas also from SPD, and people who actually do foreign policy there from SPD, and they try to, because their decision to replace without consulting with the party also had consequences for the party itself, just because it's so split right now, and SPD is not really sure what kind of role they should play in German politics, and it all comes to elections that are pretty close. It's in next year, and I don't really. I guess the problem is that socialists, their constituency of socialists, is not really satisfied with this decision, just because they don't really want to have nukes on their soil, especially American nukes. That not under control, really. I think so. There's a big debate to what extent they control them, but I don't.
Oh, come on!
Yeah,
any country would give up. Nukes. Not just America. Yeah. No country would give up control of their own nukes to.
That's true.
Anyone.
So, and the whole thing becomes really political because if socialists will have any kind of coalition, for example, with Greens, and Conservatives is going to lose their power to probably AfD. It all comes to the question if Germany won't have any kind of plans that carry this nukes. It all comes to the question of German participation in NATO, just because they, before that, nukes kind of grant Germany special status. It has another stages. In terms of when you still have nukes, it kind of, you feel maybe way more protected. But now, if they won't have any nukes, there is a question why they need NATO, probably, or maybe.
Yeah, I think after the the main flank of NATO moved east after the inclusion of the new countries, Germany does not feel such pressure to be such a big player in NATO. So this future is shaky.
Yes, and I guess Germany is a big proponent of arms control, and it's the whole situation with arms control is very bad, and Germany is in UN Security Council right now, is not permanent member, but they really propose to somehow stabilize and normalize relationships with Russia and with arms control. And the problem is the US doesn't really want it. It doesn't really pay attention to Germany's views on this issue, and this is also a bargaining chip way. If you don't listen to us as partners, and NATO is based on somehow this coalition system. There is no true hegemon. Even we know who is true hegemon, but it still should be consensual partnership. And you don't listen to us. Well, maybe we should consider quitting NATO in the future. This is probably the reality. And Germany is a pretty powerful country. It doesn't really need, probably in NATO. It can probably pretty much ally with France, which has
Yeah, first of all, Germany has no threats to their sovereignty around.
Yeah,
Not at all. I cannot see any of the neighbors of Germany
and
conducting military operations against Germany.
Germany could have good relationship with Russia. We have a lot of contacts. I mean, Russia,
Yeah.
the US, Germany, Russia. And,
Well, the projects like the Nord Stream, gas
Yeah.
pipes, they show that Germans and Russians can cooperate, no problem.
and they have easy access to Russian elite just because of the history and Eastern Germany being the part of socialist world.
Yeah, like Otto Bismarck used to say that the basis for the power of Germany is an alliance with Russia.
Oh yeah, but this was a long time ago.
Well, is it? I mean,
guess-
many people criticized Hitler exactly for the same thing, but
Well-
he did not follow. They
Yeah.
criticized German governments before World War I that they went to war with
Mhm.
Russia. They criticized German government in
Okay.
World War II that they went to war with Russia. I think some ideas last longer than a century.
Okay. But there is definitely the truth is like Russia should be involved in somehow common security initiatives and like European security initiatives because it's part of Europe. I mean, like physically, not only, and I mean just ideologically, it's still part of Europe, and they share just similar.
Yeah, but Russian credibility after actions against Georgia and Ukraine,
Yeah.
the credibility is not too big.
Yeah, but this is a tough question. It comes again to real politics. To what extent they value so much, for example, Ukraine over security space, like true
Yes,
security
this is
space.
true as well, yeah.
Because you don't really want to mess still with such a big military. And for example, if something happens with American commitment to Europe, then Europe can feel pretty threatened by if it continues like this aggressive politics against Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Which won't be the case. I mean, probably. I guess that's it.
I think this is it for
That
now.
was pretty long episode.
Yep. But
So-
we had stuff to discuss,
So thanks for listening to us.
as always.
Yeah, subscribe to our channel. We have like now YouTube channel.
Yes, we did that recently.
At Spotify.
Follow us on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter. You can participate with us in different discussions on Twitter. Really encourage you to do this. And stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
See
Goodbye.
you. Goodbye.